How's it going this week, everybody? I'm going to be having Jess on tonight, and she came on to lend some insight into the psychic communities and really give some input on some of the misconceptions that people might have about psychics. And on top of that, she shares an encounter that was really interesting while she was traveling. Also, for those of you who are new around here, we do have a membership. If you head over to challengetheunknown.com, you can get access to episodes 2 weeks before they come out. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
So it was around this time last year. I was on a Greyhound coming back from visiting some family out of state. And I was at a layover station. I want to say it was in Arizona, I think. Might have either been in Arizona or New Mexico. And we were at a stop, and I was trying to get my bags off of the baggage area because they store the baggage underneath the bus. And they weren't handing me my bag, and I was worried they just travel anxiety. And this lady comes up behind me, and just from the minute I lay eyes on her, she just exudes this energy of just power. Just, you know how you can, like, feel certain people's auras and just feel that they are a very psychically powerful person. And she's talking to me like I'm an old friend. She introduces herself, and she's upset at the driver for the same reason that I'm upset, and just very take charge attitude. Just, I'm going to go and talk to them and make sure the bags are sorted, and don't worry, honey, you're taken care of. And I'm
very
like,
intimidating person right there. That's very forward.
Yeah, she's very forward, and I'm a pagan. I have worked with Hecate's energy since I was a child. She first manifested in my life. Sorry, I'm anxious, so I'm like running out of breath.
No, you're okay. It's all right, you're doing fine. Your speech isn't circular, so you're already off to a great start. I've actually talked to a lot of people that have practiced this kind of stuff before, so don't be nervous. Just keep going.
No, it's just normal phone anxiety. But no, I'm pagan, and I've worked with Hecate pretty much my entire life. She started manifesting when I was a child. I was obsessed with dragons, and that's one of her main symbols is dragons. And then as I grew older and I grew more spiritual and I started looking at spirituality outside of Christianity and the spirituality that I was raised in, I found her, and she took me in with open arms. So immediately I felt this similar energy, and I was like, that's kind of weird. And she just, like I said in the Reddit post, she was wearing, I can't even distinctly remember what all she was wearing. I remember she was about my height, maybe a little taller, heavy set, and I'm about 5'4", so she was probably closer to 5'6", 5'7".
Okay.
Long, wild, dark hair, streaked with gray, just these intense green eyes. And she was wearing, like, I think she had a shawl on, and if you work with the goddess Hecate, or any god or goddess, they usually have certain colors, certain symbols, certain things that mark them as this is a sign of this particular being. And the colors that she was wearing were Hecate's colors. She introduced herself as Katie. And I didn't think about it. I didn't realize what I was interacting with until I was home and I had gotten off the bus and I started to think about it, and I was like, holy shit. But she immediately was very protective of me. Like, we were at the station and I had gone off to the snack counter and gotten myself some snacks and bought a souvenir. And like she was asking for me. She was like, "Oh, where were you? I thought we were going to sit together." And I was just like, "Oh, I got a snack and was eating. I'm fine." Or there was another rest stop. She came up behind me, and you know how when you have an older female relative, like an aunt or a grandmother, and they do that thing where they run their fingernails down your back just to
Right.
be silly? She did that. And it was a very, like, I didn't feel unsafe around her at all. Like, it wasn't like I was being stalked or groomed or anything like that. I genuinely felt safe around her. And I asked her where her stop was, and it was supposedly the same stop as mine. I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. But not, because, you're on a Greyhound, everyone's going different directions. And I asked her, hey, do you want to sit next to each other on the ride back? And she looked at me and she shook her head and she was like, oh no, I have someone else who needs me. I'm like, okay, whatever. Weird way to phrase it, but I was so oblivious, I guess, because I was just thinking about travel and trying to get home, and it was my first time on a Greyhound, and it just, ugh. So I'm traveling on the bus. We get to my stop. I look up and down the aisle. She's not on the bus. I get off the bus. I'm standing there watching everyone else get off. She never gets off the bus. Which,
Interesting.
again, yeah. But the encounter that I mentioned in the Reddit post, I just realized I completely skipped that. Hello, anxiety. I'm so sorry.
You're okay. Keep it going. You're all right.
We were coming into town to where my final stop would be. It was late at night, probably close to like 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm sure that driver had been driving for hours. Bus took a turn, and I guess he took the curve too sharp and wasn't paying attention, or he had to kind of swerve to miss a curb, or I don't know why it happened. All I know is that the bus rocked. Like, that kind of, it was this stomach clenching, tilting, tossing you up against the side of the seat rock. Like, oh shit, this is a very large vehicle that is currently very off-balanced rock. And I'm decently psychic. I have decent amount of abilities. I don't normally see into alternate realities, though. But this time I did. I remember writing myself after it rocked. And it's almost like I could hear, but wasn't actually hearing, and see, but I wasn't actually seeing. Trying to describe it for people that don't have psychic abilities.
So let's recap here. Let's recap real quick. So you are traveling on a Greyhound from one place to another. You're having some anxiety, and a woman comes up to you that seems pretty out of place in terms of looks and behavior. This woman is very intimidating, very forward, and acting like she knows you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys get on this bus, and you have a strange encounter when the bus rocks, and then at the end of it, when you're getting off the bus, you don't see her anymore. She's just poof, gone.
Yeah, basically, that's a good summary of it.
Interesting.
I genuinely feel like she was there to protect me and kept that bus from flipping, because like I could feel in my chest, in another reality somewhere, that bus flipped, and either I was injured or I was left psychologically scarred from whatever happened after that bus flipped. So it was definitely interesting.
That's really interesting. I honestly, back when I started the show has gotten it's branched out into a lot of different topics that I never expected to take the show. You know, it was originally just about like ghosts and flying saucers. And then I started
Mhm.
to interview people that experienced witchcraft related stuff. And, you know, people write me emails all the time and talk about all kinds of different stuff. So I get into witchcraft, you know, psychics contact me also, just all kinds of different stuff. So I've been around the boat, so to speak.
My life was being a witch and just being with my family line and stuff like that. My life was an endless stream of weird. I have had so much weird stuff happen to me.
I believe you. You know, I believe absolutely. You know, and I honestly never really bought into the whole psychic thing up until probably I think it was Ghost Adventures that really made it click for me, where they were bringing on psychics to do stuff, and there was all kinds of weird stuff that was going on that they were capturing. So that's when I really started to be like, hey, you know, maybe there's something to it, because I always imagined psychics before as like this hole in the wall kind of con show, you know, where they come in, they read some cards to you, and they charge you $100 or whatever, you know, to tell you something that you already know. That's what that was my interpretation of them before. Why don't you give the viewers who might also have this misconception some insight?
So, yes, not every psychic reading is genuine. A lot of it is power of suggestion. A lot of it is learning how to read people. A lot of it is learning how to read your environment. A lot of it is learning how to pick up on little tells that you kind of... I've literally scared people just by throwing out a generalized thing, watching how they react to it, and then kind of pulling the information out of them. And that's not necessarily deceit. It's kind of shitty to charge $200 for that because it's obviously not real psychic ability, but it's not necessarily a scam either.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I have always told people to tell the difference between people that are doing that and that are true psychics is a true psychic will never be able to control when, how, and what they see or hear. They'll never be, you'll never be able to go up to a true psychic and go, tell me something about my past, or go reach out to blah, blah relative and have them tell you something that only I would know, because that's not how true psychic ability works. Unfortunately, I wish it did. True psychic ability, it's fleeting. Sometimes it'll disappear for months and I won't see or feel anything. And then other times it's literally overwhelming and I have a headache and I have to stay in all day because it's just too much. It's basically, it's not any sort of like extra sensory, ooh, I'm special. It's just, I'm more sensitive to certain energies. For those of your listeners that are familiar with the string theory and with the multiple universes theory, there's basically a theory that there's multiple dimensions rubbing up against this one. And so when we see or feel or talk to a ghost, we're feeling those other dimensions. When we, see or hear something that happened in the future, which, by the way, the future is never set in stone. Yes, sometimes you can create your own future by trying to avoid something you think you already know, but you can change it. So when we see... I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Go on.
You're doing great. It's actually very insightful. I'm very glad you're putting this in a really good perspective. And I wanted to ask you, I've actually talked about that theory on the podcast multiple times, talking about alternate dimensions and things like that. And one of the questions that I generally ask people when they come on, whether it's about flying saucers or paranormal accounts, whatever it is, I always ask them what they think that stuff is. And ghosts in particular is one that I always bring up because a lot of the episodes that I've done are paranormal related. And I ask, do you think that these are entities that exist in different light spectrums? Do you think there's some type of interdimensional being that's, popping in and out? Or, what's your opinion on that? And so I want to ask you the same question is, what do you think ghosts are? Do you think that it's an interdimensional thing?
Well, there's different types of ghosts. There's the type that is just, it's like a spiritual fingerprint. So everywhere you go, especially if you're a particularly powerful person or have a particularly powerful aura, you leave traces of your energy. And sometimes that energy builds up. So things like hotels, things like hospitals, things like airports, things with a lot of people with a lot of nervous energy, schools, places like that, those aren't true ghosts. They're just bursts of energy. They're fingerprints. And then you have where it's spiritual residue, where it's a good example is orbs. Orbs that interact, spirits that recreate their deaths, things like that, that spirits that seem to interact and be intelligent. It's not so much that the actual person's spirit is actually there, because everyone eventually crosses over. It's more that it's kind of like it's looking down. It's like looking down onto the surface of the water, and there's something floating on the water. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying.
And then you have actual trapped souls, things like haunted dolls or other haunted objects, or like specters that haunt a particular family. And usually that's a soul that makes the conscious decision not to cross over, or it has unfinished business, or something has trapped it, because you can trap and manipulate souls if you're a shitty enough magician. I don't personally agree with the idea. I think a spirit should be free to come in and out of its own will. And then there are spirits that aren't human, never were human, and yes, those are from alternate dimensions.
Interesting. That's a fantastic take. It's really interesting. The more people I talk to about this stuff, the weirder and weirder it gets. And one of the things I always bring up, and I'll kind of lead into another question with this one, is if you would have taken 17th century Victorian era scientists and taken them to the Aurora Borealis and you showed them that, there would be something observable there, but they did not have the technology to understand what it was or how it was happening. It was basically magic to them. So I wonder if a lot of this paranormal stuff, all these energies and such that people talk about, if it's just something that we're not able to understand yet, and that we're just another 100 years away from having the technology to really understand it. Because people, I think, underestimate how advanced we really are, because I think things are going to get a lot crazier in another 100, 200 years. So I guess that'll lead into the next question is, do you think that we'll have technology that is able to comprehend this stuff better, and we'll have a better understanding of all of it in another 100 years or so?
Well, you look at the growth in things like, quantum mechanics and quantum physics and, the really big brain stuff that's a lot bigger than your brain or my brain. And like they're even already proving the existence of energy fields and auras and, broaching the possibilities of alternate dimensions and time travel and stuff like that. So I definitely think it is a possibility. There's a quote, I can't remember who the hell it's by, but magic is just science that hasn't been discovered yet.
Oh, I like that. That should be on a t-shirt.
I'm pretty sure it is.
It probably is somewhere. But yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that things are going to be better understood, And if you just look at 100, 200 years ago, how far behind we were today and how much we didn't understand, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, electromagnetic fields weren't even a thing. We didn't understand it. We had no comprehension of any of that stuff. So
we thought electricity was a ghost.
It's interesting, that's for sure, to see how how quickly things are advancing. And like I said, given another 200 years, I mean, imagine 500 years from now where humans will be, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my friends always
would,
joke about, we're like, how long is it going to be till Elon Musk builds his Iron Man suit? And we're all like, 5 years, you know. It's right around the corner. It really is, you know.
I would hope humans are still around in 500 years. The rate certain ones are going.
I think they will be. You know, humans are... a lot of people want to say that we're stupid, but at the same time, I like to imagine that aliens are looking down on our civilization. Instead of discovering the music of Beethoven or something, they discover Arabic trap music and are like, what are these dumb apes? You know, but I think that humans really are highly, highly intelligent. And I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit for what we're capable of. You know, we're doing more and more with less and less space. And I think we're going to have some technological revolutions again in terms of food production and energy production, where things are just it's going to push us really far forward. So, you know, I think we'll be around.
I think the problem that causes humans to limit themselves is honestly their narcissism. Humans like to think that they're the only smart thing in the universe. They're the only intelligent life even on Earth. And they're not. Like, you look at something as simple as a bumblebee. Just in passing, you look at the behavior of a bumblebee and go, oh, it's just a simple bee. Its nervous system isn't that advanced. It can't possibly be smart as a human. But yet bees can recognize faces. They have a complex language. They socialize. That's things that humans do. So it's like humans are they limit themselves in their thinking by thinking that they're the only ones that can think that way.
Oh, 100%. They're saying that some primates are entering basically the Stone Age. There were, I think it was orangs were spearfishing. Mm-hmm. There's a photo of an orang that's like hanging over a river, and it's using a spear to jab fish. And I can't remember if it taught itself. I'm pretty sure it learned it from watching fishermen, though. But either way, that's high intellectual ability right there for it to make a tool and then use it.
Well, you look at cetaceans, dolphins and whales, they have what's called a signature whistle. And that signature whistle, basically in their language, is a name. So, for example, during a hunt, one dolphin will signature whistle and then give a command. And that other dolphin who responds to that signature whistle will whistle back and then do the command.
That's interesting. I actually didn't know that. It's really interesting. How are you feeling on our whole... I think our conversation here has gone really well, and I think your story is really, really interesting. I think a lot of people are going to like listening to it. Is there anything else you really want to add?
Not much, really. I'm glad this went well, other than me being a ball of anxiety, but that's just because I have anxiety.
Thanks a bunch for coming on, and we'll be in touch for sure.